So as a woman, I think this will be a very obvious statement to the women listeners, but we are often underestimated. And I think that especially in what tends to be sometimes a more conservative area here, even though my district itself is about 50-50, Democrat and Republican, I think that Ohio in general is more conservative in terms of like looking at women as leaders and appointing women to positions of leadership and promoting women in general. And so I've had a lot of people say things to me like, that's going to be hard. Well, no kidding. And these are people who I respond to, yes, it is hard to run for office. It is also hard to graduate from the Naval Academy or go to war or have twins. But I've done those things too. The twins is the hardest of all of those for sure. But I absolutely am infuriated every time that someone mentions to me with a semi-condescending tone, it's going to be hard, right? And then they'll say, sometimes they'll say, you're probably not going to win. and I said, okay, are you polling people? Like, where are you getting this information? No, it's just this idea in people's minds. My opponent is a 66-year-old white man who is upper middle class, and he lives in a better off part of Stark County. So I'm a young mom. I will say I'm young. I'm 37. I'm a young-ish mom, and I come from a public service background, and I guess people think that that's not relevant to being an elected official. I think that the skills that somebody has in serving their country in, for example, military service, if I was a man, those would be considered very applicable. For some reason, I'm like a second class sort of a veteran, not a real veteran because I'm a female kind to some people. So I've got a lot of like very upsetting comments, and I try to look past some of them and just say, I would like to tell you about my background and where I come from. And sometimes people will say, you have done a lot of things. But the thing that bothers me is I shouldn't have to have qualifications that go far above that of my opponent to be taken seriously. I should be taken seriously because I am a person who met the qualifications to run for this office the same way that he did. I was a registered voter. I got the right amount of signatures. I filed all of my paperwork accurately. That makes me exactly as qualified for this job as he is. And then we can talk about the other things, the bonuses. But I've gotten a lot of, I think, this kind of archaic response from people where they just believe politicians are supposed to be stodgy old white men. And if you don't fit that mold, then maybe you're not really qualified. And it's very infuriating. So I will summarize by saying, yes, that post was a summation for me of many experiences and many interactions I'd had with other people. And I am always very respectful to the people in person when they say these things, even if they hurt me a little bit when I hear them. But I do think that when I'm interacting with people, and that's a common theme, that it's worth addressing in a more direct way. So that's why I made that post. And I've gotten a lot of really positive responses, especially from women, because I think that we're used to being underestimated.
I think anyone who can raise twin 2-year-olds, never mind with another kid at home, like that, you're qualified for anything in my book.
Oh my gosh. I have one 2-year-old. I can't even imagine 2 2-year-olds.
Thank you. I appreciate your words of encouragement. Thank you.
So one of the things I wanted to ask about is you've been endorsed by a ton of different organizations, including Run for Something, which is super exciting. Could you talk a little bit about the endorsement process and what these endorsements mean to you?
Yes. So actually, this is probably the nerd in me coming out, but I really enjoy applying for endorsements. I feel like it's like when I applied for college or applied for scholarships or something like that. So you get an opportunity to talk about my motivation for doing things. And, I choose where I apply for endorsements. So I found groups that I really believed in, like Emily's List, Run for Something, PCCC. It had a lot of endorsements that I've been really proud of. And I'm afraid if I start listing them all, I'll forget one and then I'll be upset about it. But I think that for me, it's a lot of fun for me to say, hey, this is what I've been totally crushing on about your organization. And this is what I love that you're doing. And this is why I think that I'm a good fit for it. And so you basically do an application and you fill out questions. Some endorsements, like for labor unions, are, less about your background and more about your views on issues that are important to them. Some groups, they really want to talk about your district and see if your district is a good fit for them. And some groups are really interested in you as a person. And so it's been really interesting. And I've met a lot of really great people actually through the endorsement process, which is still ongoing. So, this is my first time running for office. I had no real idea of what it was going to be like before, but it's been kind of a rolling process. There are a lot of different deadlines. It's individual to each endorsement. Like, for example, I'm still waiting to hear back from Vote Vets because they didn't have such a strict deadline. So I put them off a little bit because there were some really early deadlines for some other groups. So it's kind of fun because it's like a little reward when you find out that you get an endorsement. So one thing that I didn't know, I kind of assumed that if you got endorsed by somebody that they would automatically give you some financial support. It's not always the case. And so support comes in different ways depending. So like the other aspects of the endorsement process, it's different based on the group. So like Run for Something and Emily's List have been a wealth of resources, of advising and educational opportunities. And, I've been able to be part of online groups where we can bounce ideas off of each other and get help with specific things as we need them. And so those sorts of support are really great. And I feel very lucky to be running this year where there are so many different groups supporting people who are new first-time candidates, because it's hard and it's a totally different ballgame. And without these groups to support us, I feel like it would be really hard to recreate the wheel for every single person. So it's been really nice.
So it's my understanding that this is your first time running for office. What's it like to be running for office for the first time against somebody who I believe your opponent is the current majority leader in the Ohio House of Representatives? Like he's been running for a long time. What's it like to run against somebody who has, so much money and experience?
Right. So he actually finally just was replaced as the interim Speaker of the House. Yes, it was a very dramatic situation. There was a lot of infighting among the Ohio House GOP. So I am running for the first time, and my opponent has been in office since 1993. So he's had a lot of opportunity to build up alliances and build relationships with people here in Stark County and also at the State House. And I think that includes building relationships with the local newspaper. So he's been able to have a lot more positive publicity, free earned press about him. And it's been a lot harder for me to get things printed when I send out press releases and things like that. So it's been frustrating because there are certainly a lot of ties that he's been able to build within the community with influential people. So that's something that I have to counter every day with meeting as many people as I can and talking to as many people in the community as I can. And I'm very proud of the fact that I have a very people-powered campaign. And so he does have a lot more financial resources. He has big corporations that have been supportive of him, that owners of big corporate. He has not gotten nearly the amount of individual donors that I have, but he's gotten backing from people related to corporations who have access to a lot more funding. So it's definitely different. And he is, I think, the epitome of a career politician who's been able to amass power and business connections, and he's been able to find ways to get people to do things for him for many years. And I am coming to this campaign from a public service background where I literally worked in service to people with disabilities. So I was working for the most marginalized people in our community who tend to be forgotten. So that's the opposite of the influential, powerful ruling class, I will say, in Ohio politics that he works with. So it's been very different. And I have to be very aware when I am running my campaign that I have to get far more individual financial contributions than him, because mine are going to be smaller dollar contributions, and I have to meet tons of people. And that's why I spend my time going out into the community as much time as I can at community events and canvassing and meeting people and talking to people about what really matters to them, because I know he doesn't even conceive of doing those things in his campaign. He goes on name recognition alone. So there's a big kind of power discrepancy between the two of us, but I hope that people will see that I am making far more effort to work to earn their votes, and that he's just phoning this campaign in.
So when you're out in the community sort of talking to people, what are some of the issues that people talk to you about? What are some things that people in Stark County are really caring about?
One of the things, especially when I talk to people in the city of Canton and the city of Alliance, are very concerned about infrastructure. And those cities have been ignored. The needs of those cities have been ignored, except where like this large Hall of Fame village that's being built up comes into play. And coincidentally, my opponent helped to make that happen, and they gave him a lot of money. So it's been very selective, like where things have improved in the community. But the rest of the community has, on some streets, more pothole than actual street. And I wish I were joking, but I'm not. It's literally, there are streets in our city where it's almost completely undrivable. I have a 4-wheel drive SUV. If I had a regular car, I don't think that I would be able to access the roads at all in some parts of Canton. And a lot of people are very concerned about that, because people obviously care about the roads. They care about the things that affect them on a daily basis. My opponent doesn't even spend that much time here. He's mostly in Columbus. So maybe he's forgotten what is important to people in Stark County. But I live here every day, and I see these issues, and people bring them up. And they're the same issues that I'm concerned about. So they don't come as a surprise to me, you know. Additionally, the local government fund. So it's a big deal here, but money is being held in quote, emergency fund in Columbus. And that money was supposed to go to the local city governments for things like the infrastructure, like the potholes, like maintenance that is needed in our city. And it's not being given to the city, so that the cities have to try to get money through additional levies and tax increases just in order to get the bare minimum done. So these potholes aren't getting fixed. And we, in Canton, we just I live in North Canton, but on the last